That being said, I would have to describe what that split is, but I'll explain it in different terms. And those terms, in order to explain how I see that split, I've got to discuss Plato and Aristotle. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep it again. I'm not a historian or a classical literature guy that studies this stuff. I was only trying to solve my own problem, the legal problem in contract and causation. And I've got a different picture. When I was doing that PhD, I knew it. I know all the pieces, and it's all there. Like, it's all out there already. This information is already there. You can see it and whatever. It's just how you actually assemble the pieces. When you put them in a particular way, when you end up with a view or a window that you look at things that may not be the same window as that guy. So if I was to say in my view, there's about 5 billion windows in mine. We've got 5 million people, so everybody has a view, no matter what, and it's unique. It's unique because my eyes are not sitting in his, so I don't see what he sees or she sees or this baby sees. So I don't see this. I only see what I see. So I think that anybody listening to this is going to sort of think the way I speak a bit strange. And yes, it is, because I'm going to try and change the way I speak, and I'll explain as I do it, but I'll try and change the way I speak from, let's say, a universalist mixture, syntax, semantics, and what have you, the way we use today, but largely not the way we're being pushed to today, particularly in Europe and Canada, and anybody else who wants to jump on the New World Order machine. I think that machine is not sustainable, and I think of a better idea. But it requires reevaluating individualism. I think that we've got to, we can't lose individualism, otherwise you lose that, everything. So while people might want to structure or phrase their view of the world in terms of individualism and universalism, or Catholicism and Protestantism, or Republicanism, or this, we'll always have this dialectic. It's buried in Plato. That's the way we sort of, good, evil, all the dichotomies, warm, wet. Warm, cold, wet, dry, do, short. So we got a lot of language here that we use to actually frame the world. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. I don't know what I'm going to do. I have to think about what I'm going to do next. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to invite you into the window that I'm going to actually paint as we go along. I'm going to show you this. I'm going to show you the window. I know you've got your own, but I'm only asking you temporarily to look through mine. See what I see. You might be able to prove it, actually. Or perhaps not. Or perhaps this, you've got your own window that is better or identical to the one that unlocks you want to do. But, I never know that. What I say might come across as, what's this? Cow dung. I'll try not to use bad language. Out of respect both for myself and for you. I'll try that. Sometimes it's just rolls out by rote. So I'd like to invite you to look through this window. I'm going to try and develop, and I'll try not to be too positivistic if I'm talking about you, because when I'm speaking you might think I'm a bit me. Actually it's not. It's a lot more about you. But that doesn't become apparent until we make a few changes, and possibly the way that we can think together, and that when we look at a tree, that we both have a commonality is that this is a tree that we both agree. I look at a tree, and no matter if I cut it down, kill it, and I break it up, look at the xylem, the phloem, whatever, the stem, the trunk, this is green, and have all the appearance, so I can cut it down into its individual corpses, but I still have no idea what that thing is. I can put names to stuff. It's a tree. Oh, it's part of the planking, but I still won't be able to explain what it is. So Yeah, I think the next thing might be to sort of the beginnings of building up a framework. Now, I said about this, black, white, the black, I'm talking about the political black, white, you're black, you're white, the political black, white, not the colours, black, white, individuals use universalism, or whatever, and we can frame it on what we think are opposites, but in some cases they're not quite opposite. If I was to frame my own description, that's what's good, I would frame it in terms of being and non-being. Nicking it off Shakespeare, to be or not to be. And I think that's, for me, that's a not very appropriate, possibly pre-topical view on perhaps not. If you're still here, thank you. But I'm about to embark on the subscription, so so please be aware that my language isn't that great. A lot of what I say is rote-on, and I do struggle. It's probably evident by now, but I think this is important. Not just because I think it's important for basically for every single one. I promise. I'll never be able to explain this. But then again, I think and feel in a different way to, let's say, a dog, or a cat, or an ant, or a bird. If you're still here, I don't know. I'm going to talk about a little story next time, and it's called to try and build this window. Yeah, I think it's called. I'm going to my structure: Narcissus and Echo. It's an old Greek story. So, all right, I'm going to leave that for now.
Okay. In the earlier part of the video, I mentioned some things that don't necessarily, the way I phrased them, what have you, don't necessarily convey what I'd intended to convey. I'm not saying I'm going to be very precise in some of the stuff, but there are some things I said that might be coloured in a different way to the colour that I wanted to put forward. Yeah. First thing, I would think it was a bit extreme when I compared my experience in London as an Irishman with the San Francisco Irishman from the 1800s or whatever. But I mean, it's the only sort of it was nowhere near that. I mean, there was individualistic times and whatever like that. But my experience in London, the benefit from what I got in my time, 25 years or whatever, in London and England also, and a bit in Scotland, my time there, the benefit I got from that far outweighs anything. So I don't necessarily cover a whole experience based on what we call singular instances. Yeah. I mean, if you look at children and the like, the problem, one of the problems that was explained to me before was that with a child you could say you could give them sort of positive reinforcement, if you like. That's a B.F. Skinner type arrangement. You give them positive reinforcement, and maintain that. But you only have to say one negative thing once, and it's the negative thing that will stick in the head. I hope that's not how things are going to pan out. Anyway, when I refer to capital E, I was actually the capital E is used in the context of expert, but in the Academy of Experts, and the Academy of Experts is an organisation in principally, I think, based in Gray's Inn, London. It's part of an overall legal, the UK, I mean, I think it's be reasonable to say it's part of the UK legal complex, yeah? And they do a lot of training for how you do your reports and, how you conduct yourself during court proceedings and things like that. But I did those courses and did, expert determination, and I got, refreshers when I was in Hong Kong. There was in the Hong Kong Football Club, very nice, very colonial, very nice building, and No, but that's the type of, so why was it, what was that? Yes, these reports that you would do as an expert, when you see movies and things like that, it's and you see, let's say, a medical expert or an insurance expert or a legal expert or some expert being questioned in a box, civil law. There's loads of programs, you know what I mean, on TV about this. Yeah, so if you do a report, the report is the evidence in chief, yeah? I mean, in some circumstances, it's the evidence in chief. And your duty in this thing, irrespective of who's paying you, doesn't matter who's paying you money to do this, your duty is to the court, to partiality and be seen to be impartial. That's the thing. That is entirely different from being objective and being seen to be objective, as you might use in science or anything. It's an entirely different set of precepts attached to it, actually. Because one relates to ratio, in my view, because you've got it, it's self-evident in the words, impartiality, but in the objective thing, it has objective and object, object meaning throw, and how you use your interface with objectivity in the world, it actually frames you quite a lot as well. Anyway, this is a very short bit here. So the ways and you needed all this stuff for work, I mean, if you've got, particularly if you're working on several Middle East countries or you're over in Asia or in the Far East or something like that, you need a lot of letters, in order to keep. And if you're on your own, if you decide to go the expat route and you're working internationally, you tend to be alone a lot, particularly in the consulting side. What else? Yeah, so you needed a force. The more, like you've got youngsters coming up, so you got to it's not just experience, because these accolades or whatever you want to call them, like chartered builder and chartered surveyor and things. There was another couple, I forgot to mention them. If you've got all that stuff, then it gives you, in their eyes, it's credibility, and it's from London, it's tied into London and stuff like that. So you've got this sort of common law, maybe affinity or something like that. Maybe not so much in the Middle East, but I mean a lot of the principles in construction law and got transferred into the Middle East. Whether they're American versions or the FIDIC, there's an international one called FIDIC. But you would have a sort of domestic contract, then you've got the international contracts, like what you call the FIDIC suite. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So. When I mentioned democracy, and it was a really bad example using the States, in Athens, when these type of things were being devised, I don't know the population, but it's way below 500,000. I mean, I think in some respects, I heard someone was 30,000 citizens. That doesn't include slaves, yeah? 30,000 citizens, like people of the city, the polis, that's where the word comes from, polis, politics. Polis means city, I think that's the Greek, I can't remember. Perhaps I'm stepping on some academics' toes or whatever, but I'm not, it's nothing to do with it. So when I mentioned democracy, it literally means that if you've got a small amount of people, let's say a community or 2 communities or 3 communities that are in the town, let's say if you take a town, might be a better example, any town, it means that if any change had to be made, let's say in the law or in the, how things are going to proceed within that town in any shape, form, behaviour, the physicality of it all of those decisions might be have to be made by everybody, yeah? And there's some basis of evaluation, but everybody has that vote. And that, again, that's impractical. And that was one of the things that Plato wanted to avert, because these type of populist type things sort of occur at a time like when the temperature of the people is of a thing that may not be consistent with what's gone before or what would be the intention forward, and listen, come here, you can pick any issue, you pick it out there, spin it, you got all these factions fighting over the same bloody thing, and at the end of the day, yeah, well, you know. So it wasn't just democracy he didn't want to have, because he was, you know, these populist type of decisions. Yeah, they made the decision, like in America recently, but my view is that we need to focus an awful lot more on individuals, as say, what does your vote mean, or you know, what is it, you know, how are things really happening? And I mean, I'm talking at a human level, you know. That was one of the other things I was going to say. I'm going to use a lot of, you know, possibly difficult words. Took me forever to get my teeth and get into this and unpack some of this stuff, you know. Individualism, universalism, and there's a couple, the chief ones, and probably the ones that would be determinism and necessary connection. The necessary connection relates to change. I can't say anything other than that. I'm just taking change, no matter what it is, whether it's this planet, any change. Because later on, we're going to try and rephrase those back into the Aristotelian type of scenario, and then describe what's happening in the world, and then sort of put it in Aristotelian terms. Yeah, it might open up a little bit. If it opens up a few doors, it's got to be, you know, a few mental doors to say, oh, there's that there, and there's this there, and we're so locked in left, right, Republican, Democrat. Jeez, that ain't going to do, I don't think. That's my personal view, you know. Yeah, so I did that. So it wasn't just democracy. They had this thing that we had the 30 tyrants before that, and then they had oligarchs in the different ways. And basically what Plato was trying to do, he's trying to create the polis, Athens, you know. And in order to sort of demonstrate that Athens is going to go downhill or something, he makes a comparison with an earlier civilization. And that comes from stories, and that earlier civilization is the story of Atlantis. And Plato's probably the only guy that actually mentions this at all. I think he's mentioned it a few times in some other publications and what have you, but I think he's the only one that actually it only comes from him. Yeah, he's the only guy, though, you know. It's in a book called Timaeus and Critias, but if you read it, don't read it as a thing. Read it as a, could this have happened? Could it, you know, look at it like that. I mean, we mythologize an awful lot of stuff and whatever, like, but is it feasible that this, in my view, entirely feasible. Like, I mean, there's 4 tectonic plates, you know, all converging in the same place, the end of the Ice Age, all this stuff, rising levels and sea and what have you like this. Look, you know, when I would probably do something on that, because there were some things that were in that story that I thought really strange, you know, that don't get, you know, straight out into the into the populist views of Atlantis, and so like, there was the man Atlantis, and you know, and every time, like Wonder Woman, I think she was supposed to Wonder Woman or something, but I don't know, some other this popular type stuff that they're bringing in, and the reinventions of this, that, and the other. Or Martin does it a lot. He's a writer, and so did the lady who did, you know, the Expelliarmus or whatever, I can't remember, J.R. Rowling's, you know. But there's some patterns in there, but if I take them out, like, they're just part of a story that was, you know, well, you make that decision yourself. No, that's not to say that they're actually nicking anything like this. You know, this is part of the fabric of, I'm not saying they're stealing anything like this, this is all part of the fabric of storytelling, you know. They might have made commercially out of this, but they're still telling a story, and it might be a little bit, you know, who am I to judge or like that? I'm not doing any of that stuff. But I do like the idea. I mean, I know that in the or Martin thing, you know, Game of Thrones, like, you've got characters like the Hound, and straight away, like, it was filmed in Ulster, I think, but I'm thinking the Hound of Ulster, you know, with this an old Irish character, Cuchulainn, you know. And then you've got the guy with the sword that comes out, but he's got a patch in his eye, like that there is reeking to me of Baelor. Baelor, he's an old Irish god and stuff like that. The one-eyed Baelor and Nemedian and stuff like that. And then there was anybody who's around about my age will remember a band called Horselips. You know, they were a Celtic rock group that ended in Ireland and stuff like that. But you take the sword out and you've got the sword of light because it's got fire coming in. And that's all in the Game of Thrones or Martin's version. It was quite good. Tolkien did something the same. There was bits and bobs and whatever like this. But, you know, fun's fun, you know. when I was, another thing, when I refer to early settlements and things like that, I mean, I said that America, the USA and all this, there was nothing there. What I'm really seeing is that within the paradigm of the Western world, yeah, what we had as the paradigm, there were, I mean, I'm going to use the populist type language here, the world's flat. That's what it is. The world is flat. And notwithstanding that, even today, to me, the world appears flat. Still, even today. I know there's an objective world, but that's a slightly different thing. You know, it's the difference, and it might be because I'm going to introduce this later on, but it's the difference between, let's say, if you laying floor tiles on a floor, and you know that there's 600, and you know that they're all identical, they're uniform, yeah, one form, and then using these floor tiles right down the road, or floorboards or stuff like that, and you've laid them out, and you know that you can look at them on plan and stuff like that. But when you come back and look at it, and you look at it, those lines are converging. The tiles the lines between each of the tiles will converge. So if you're throwing a spear, there's no mathematical calculation here. There's no objective mathematical calculation here. Like, I'm not carrying, that's, if I've got a spear and I'm thinking I'm back in I'm Asterix, say, you know, I'm throwing a spear or something, or throwing an axe, you know, in 2,000-year-old, whatever. I'm throwing it, but I'm not thinking of any objective measure. I've got my own objective measure that is based on, if I look at floorboards, women may not do this because I think women perceive things in a slightly different way. But, you know, I find like the lines are converging. My senses tell me the lines are converging. To say they're not converging, for me, is a falsehood. What I've got to do is I've got to introduce the notion that I've got a personal knowledge in which the earth is flat, not flat, but what I see, my field of vision, is essentially flat. But to entertain the idea that there is an objective world that you can calculate, that we take on trust based on certain things that actually tell you. And not only that, the other thing is the fit. Because the idea of the descriptions that are used now, like, I mean, to me, on the face of it, they feel very plausible, you know, like on the objective world and how the planet is moving. But once you start moving into science and stuff and psychology and stuff and people doing it, it's entirely, there's no objectivity here because there'll always be the person who's trying to, there'll always be the will to do this. And you say, it's for the benefit of mankind, it's for the, you know, whatever. Okay, I'm going to say, in the last 100 years, I think that there's been a folding in, basically you take scientific method 200-300 years ago. I think in the last 100 years there's been a folding in of, you know, back onto man, you know. It's just an Ouroboros. It's like the serpent eating its own tail type of affair. And I think that's where we are, like, because we've got this tautology, X is equal to X, and that's how we express our laws of the universe. I mean, that's it, X is equal to X, as a subject predicate, that's how we express the laws of the universe that are the celebrity scientists or the scientists are actually putting forward as this other world, this objective world, you know, where the tiles are all uniform and all that stuff. But I'm not going to go into that at the moment. I'm just me. And I'm probably going to tend back a little to the individuals rather than to that objective world in which you can have you can take what you want from that and create a brand of existential, a brand of a type of thought with its own branding and meanings relating to universalism, yeah, which I don't think that's going to work, yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Democracy, tyrants, oligarch. The democracy, there's the authoritarians, there's oligarchs. So he's looking for something a bit better. Yes, sorry, I did that earlier point. When we're talking about early settlement, I mean, that's what I meant. It's not even on the radar. Nobody even knows about America at this stage. You know, their paradigm is just, you know, Ireland's at the very furthest end of the world in their view, you know. So the next one, why does the jurisdiction of England and Wales matter? I mean, when I speak about it, yeah, because that's where the law, those are the bounds of where the law operates for a particular thing. You might question it again if you're looking at the current situation as to where your fence is from which you offend or defend. You might look and say, where is our fence? I mean, I think some people think it's way in the Persian Gulf, you know, that's where the fence is, you know, so everything there, would offend them and whatever. But these type of issues, like, they're quite old, and it's that much, going to that type of engagement, I think is a real issue, like the nuclear stuff. It's all, for me, it's all real, but it's using a sort of archaic type of, possibly on both sides, an archaic type of approach to, let's say, how are we going to deal with our planet in the next, you know, well, it's me, you, but that fucking dialectic, that's all, a lot of it's Plato. I mean, not necessarily it is Plato, it's just that it's justified by Plato. Like, I mean, you can see it on both sides of the, you can see it, let's say, in the parliament, you've got two sides, in any parliament, and there'll be some issue and another, so it's this debating type thing, you know, which is, in Ireland, I'm a bit disappointed actually, because it doesn't turn like debate, it turns like total ad hominem, fucking jibe, dirt, really, it's really not, doesn't look really good to me as an Irishman. And I'm somewhere in some other country and I'm watching this and it's really upsetting to me, you know. I mean, is that what we are, you know? Like, it's just awful, you know. That's not to say I'm soft in any way. You might think I'm being a bit soft, but you know, perhaps. But the England and Wales jurisdiction is very, very important because you've just seen the British Empire finish up, yeah? And a lot of the Americanisms, when it came up on board, you know, with the early settlements, so they started importing a bit of Europe, bit of this, bit of that, bit of thing, you know, because they're actually building up their own thing. And the buzzword back then is sort of, it appears to be state, republic, or that type of thing, you know. So that's where you got states, and then you got federalism and stuff like that. But again, England and Wales, its extent, and the common law, what we refer to as the common law system, its extent and its influence has covered something about 160 countries. 160, yeah. That excludes, I think, America, because they, even though they're using what you might call a common law system, there's some areas which don't. And I think there's some states in Canada that don't. They use a civil law system, which is in France, Germany, and whatever like this. A system that's written out. You might have noticed that I've just totally messed up the last part of the video, but I'm going to leave it for that. The whole idea of this video here and what I've got there is just to add in and to build up a little bit of credibility for this other stuff I'm going to explain. And I'm going to try and humanize some of the big stuff, the underlying issues that have affected law, politics, and hopefully, you know, like even you do it or I do it or something, but there might be the generation of it, some sort of shared discussion or whatever like that. He says, well, this is my world as well. He said, what are we going to do about it? But, you know, I hope you listen to some of this stuff later on. I think it might be worth it, you know. All right. Thank you.